Like the disciples, I too am shut in behind closed doors. They were afraid of the Jewish authorities. I'm afraid of catching or spreading a virus. So while there's no way I can truly understand what it was like to be one of those first disciples, I can understand what it means to try to be a disciple today. And like all human beings, I can understand what it means to be afraid. You know the story. Jesus appears to the disciples who are shut in behind closed doors because of their fear. And they're all there except for Thomas, who is out doing something else. Maybe he's out being brave. Maybe he's out being courageous. After all, earlier in the Gospel of John, when they receive word that Lazarus is very ill, the other disciples, the ones that are currently shut in behind doors, said, "Let's not go there. The Jewish authorities are out to get us." But it was Thomas who said, "Let's go and die with Jesus." So Thomas, who knows what he's out doing? He deserves a good nickname. Maybe he should be called Brave Thomas or Courageous Thomas. But that's not the nickname he's been given, is it? Jesus appears to the disciples, and he does something that in linguistics is called a performative. A performative is a combination of a spoken word and an action, and it requires both that spoken word and that action for that gesture to have meaning. It creates a new social reality. There are examples of performatives. One might be, "I christen this ship the Queen Elizabeth." When you say the words and you do the act, you are creating a new reality. You are naming the ship. Another one might be, "I baptize you in the name of the Creator, the Sustainer, and the Redeemer." And when the minister says these words and does this act, that combination creates a new reality. A baptism takes place. I think Jesus is doing a performative when he appears to the disciples behind closed doors. What he says is, "Peace be with you." What he does is show them the marks and the wounds. And that is what makes that powerful. It's what creates the new reality. And the new reality is him breathing on them the gift of the Holy Spirit. And so now things are different because of that combination. Spoken word, act, peace be with you, look at my wounds. But of course, Thomas wasn't there. So what did the disciples do? Well, they told Thomas that Jesus had appeared to them. They gave him a report, and they expected him to believe it. Now, Thomas, I must admit, is kind of a hero of mine. I can relate with Thomas. He famously refused to believe because it seemed to be an outrageous kind of claim. And he said, "Unless I see the marks and feel the wounds, I will not believe." And so he has been given a nickname, not Brave Thomas, not Courageous Thomas, but Doubting Thomas. Friends, I stand with Thomas. Because listen, whenever someone tries to sell you a gospel that is just a report to believe in, then you should ask for more evidence. You should ask for a better reason. Whenever someone tries to give you a gospel but doesn't show you woundedness, then that's a gospel that you should leave behind. Now, we live in a frightened world where people want vulnerability and woundedness to go away, to be permanently resolved or ignored. Much of what passes for Christianity today is a blemish-free gospel that you can believe in while sitting safely on your sofa. That is not the gospel that Jesus expressed to the disciples. You see, the problem with this story, I don't think, is with Thomas. I think it's with the other disciples who thought that the gospel could be reported on and believed in. When Jesus appears the second time, this time with Thomas, he does that performative again. Peace be with you. Here are my wounds. See, there is no peace without woundedness. And there are no peacemakers without wounds. Many centuries ago, Christianity chose to become a religion of belief. And out of that, we learn to divide our faith up into faith and works. I think we should forget all that and take a more unified approach. The gospel can't be divided. It's wounds and peace. And those always have to be communicated together. So be wary of any minister or any gospel that is presented to you without showing you the wounds. Because that's what makes it real, that's what makes it authentic, and that's what makes it powerful. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard told a parable once about a person who escaped from an insane asylum. And he decided that he was going to he found a ball and put it in his pocket. And as he walked into the nearby town, he decided that every time he felt that ball in his pocket, he was going to say a truth like, the world is round, the world is round. Because he was afraid that the people would identify him and put him back into the asylum. So he wanted to come across as sane. So he walked around town and he repeated this truth over and over again. The world is round, the world is round. Needless to say, it didn't take them very long to realize that he belonged in the asylum. So truth is not something that you can just say. It has to match with a life. It has to go with who we are. And for Christianity, it has to go along with a sense of woundedness and vulnerability. After Easter, it is common for Christians everywhere to say, Christ is risen. And we have to be careful that our Christ is risen isn't like that the world is round. It has to be connected to something real, something authentic, something that is vulnerable, and something that reveals our own woundedness. That's what makes it powerful, and ultimately what makes it liberating and what leads to real resurrection. I'm grateful that in this district we participated in the grocery gift card project, where we have worked with school systems and given out $40,000 worth of grocery gift cards. Now, we could have just given a report on how we feel about people who are struggling. We could have just said, we ought to help people. We ought to help people. But that would have meant nothing if we had not combined it with an act that says we participate in this world with you. And this is an act that we provide not out of charity, but out of solidarity in a way that provides dignity to the people who needed to use those gift cards. Because we are not that different. We are all human beings. We are all filled with hope and filled with fear. And we have to be honest about that so that when we say, Christ is risen, or when we say, peace be with you, we are participating also in the woundedness of the world. Amen.